Don't ever call me doll.
Don't let your kids watch it!
Amidst the recent avalanche of remakes, reboots, remasters, and sequels, it somehow is surprising and yet not surprising at all that Warner Brothers decided the one property that needed to be dragged back from necrosis was Space Jam, a true icon of the 90s. Despite its absolutely insane premise, which many actors found it hard to stomach, it actually turned out to be the highest-grossing basketball film of all time, thanks in no small part to brand recognition of both Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan, who was experiencing explosive popularity. So from the perspective of a soulless corporate boardroom, a sequel was probably inevitable. Unfortunately, they went with Looney Tunes back in action, and that kind of sunk the ship. But it's been over 2 decades and that stain has been wiped away. The smell of resurgence was in the air. They could see it now. Lines of millennials thirsty for that sweet nostalgia nectar, eager to give them money. But the Warner Bros. Saw problems on the horizon. 2 really big problems that could destroy the reputation of their film before it even released. Lola Bunny's breasts. That's right, Lola Bunny, aka the reason anyone remembers the first Space Jam existed, aka the reason every fan of Space Jam has to begin every single sentence with, "I'm not a furry, but," aka the new face of the franchise thanks to a very odd character design decision. They sanded down her chest. The internet has absolutely exploded recently. Furries and nostalgic fans made an unstable alliance. Apparently, it even became a political stance merely to ask the question, where are the bunny boobs, Warner Brothers? Where are they? Well, back in 2014, Warner Brothers confirmed that the movie was actually getting made, and the process since has been rocky. There's been no less than 3 directors on this film, and the latest is Malcolm D. Lee, brought on late in production in 2019. Mr. Lee had never seen Space Jam before in his life, and when he watched it, he realized that the original animators made the audacious decision to make a female character look, well, feminine. And that, Mr. Lee decided, simply would not do. Lola Bunny was very sexualized, like Betty Boop mixed with Jessica Rabbit, he said, citing extensive knowledge of at least 2 things the internet was horny for. Lola was not politically correct. This is 2021, he says, quick to remind everyone we do indeed live in a society in the current year. So we reworked a lot of things, not only her look, like making sure she had an appropriate length on her shorts, and was feminine without being objectified, but gave her a real voice. Whatever that means. The thing I wanted to focus on, though, is sexualized. It's a funny word choice because it seems to imply that no matter what you do, you can't escape the fact that Lola is automatically the sexy character. But is this true? Is Lola actually sexy? What qualities does she have that are intrinsically sexual? According to the redesign, it was her body. Now let's not mince words. Lola was clearly meant to be seen as attractive in the original movie by the other cartoon characters. Yes, she does have feminine characteristics, and in the movie she clearly doesn't mind having them. But in removing those parts of her for the remake, Lee and Warner Brothers are unintentionally or not making the argument that merely having those parts of yourself means that you are inherently sexual, and that getting rid of them means you are inherently less sexual. Sorry boys, you're just not part of the sexy club, no matter how many clothes you take off. A flat chest doesn't turn on anyone, and has never, ever been sexualized by anyone. Perhaps if you had some female-presenting nipples, you too could be the center of an internet argument. But I would think this very mindset is the problem, not whether or not Lola is rocking a rack. There is an inherent irony in a man who wasn't even a fan of the original movie, coming out here saying that it's 2021, and we can't possibly be expected to expose ourselves to things like female anatomy. It's a neo-puritanical take on the age-old arguments of sexism. We require girls, even fictional ones, to not show parts of their own body in order to become more respectable, so men can respect them respecting themselves. Lola doesn't possess a real voice until she ditches the shorts and crop top and can't possibly be an authentic and strong character while she has even an inch of sexiness about her. After all, you don't want your fandom to be full of furries, do you? But here's the point I'm trying to make. A fictional character has no intrinsic sexuality. Yes, you can argue the internet will slobber over any curves it can get, but people have made naughty drawings of this, and this, and this, none of which showed overt signs of being sexualized in their respective canons, but that didn't stop a lot of fans, and it never will, because these characters aren't real, and you can't control how people perceive them. The sexiness of a character isn't up for debate because it doesn't exist, except in the minds of people who view that character. WB released another version of Lola in 2011, also sans much of her femme fatale persona. Here's a clip of her.
Bun Bun! I'm back!
Lola? Isn't it sold?
I'm back in your life! At least for one date, and you can't say no because it's for a good cause. Littering!
Now let's pause. Let me zoom in. More. Wait. What are those?
Jesus Christ.
Rabbit titties. But did anyone care? No one. Not a single solitary soul acknowledged that this Lola wears skirts and has figure-hugging clothes that clearly show off a female physique. Or that Mrs. Incredible has enough cake for a birthday party. Or that Aunt Kaz showed up on a Sassy Housewives magazine in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Those are all perfectly fine and not sexualized at all. Right? After all, Disney animators of Frozen said that animating women is really hard because you have to keep them both pretty and on model, and that movie made $1 bazillion, so it must be right. But then why is new Lola no longer on model? Is this version of her not pretty? What even about this image so scandalized the prim and proper production team of Space Jam 2? You might say that Lola was presented as a sexual character due to the way she acted, but again, she was attractive only to other toon characters. Michael Jordan? Not a furry. Like any good team captain, his focus was all on the game.
The girl's got some skills.
The part where she saunters out and shows off in silhouette as dozens of spectators whistle and cheer and ogle her shapely, curvaceous body. Okay, maybe that was a bit much, but still. Are we really going to say that just because a woman knows she is attractive and possesses talent that that's a problem? After all, she is written as the best player on the entire team besides Michael himself, and she knows it. She never once feels coerced to be on the team, and she never once let herself be defined by the men in her life. And no, just having a romance doesn't count. And if that's the angle you want to take, well, the 2011 version actually did define herself by the man in her life.
I'll watch you through the chimney.
So the question is, what's really the problem here? The only thing the new Lola ditched is her body shape, though they let her keep the butt, inexplicably, which is kind of weird. This tweet probably puts it best. We seem to have reached this strange point at which female characters must adhere to unrealistic standards of beauty, until they don't, because that's ugly and weird and might attract strange people on the internet. This? Way too sexy. Not sexy at all. This? Not sexy at all. The new sexy. And is it really even appropriate to use the word sexy? Why do we even use these words in tandem with cartoon characters when cartoon characters are not supposed to be sexy? Is that not just creating a self-fulfilling prophecy? Maybe if we stopped using the word sexy to describe these characters, people would stop viewing them as sexualized. Judy Hopps has more curve to her chest than Lola Bunny, which is just the absolute peak of irony, if you ask me. And it's worth noting there are Judy Hopps-like alternatives to the new design that are still cute without sacrificing every curve, although I'm not sure what can be done to salvage whatever this is. And one would be hard-pressed to find evidence that Judy was sexualized. But what about those scenes with Lola? Wasn't she sexualized because other characters like the way she looks? Well, are we going to say that a character's sexuality is predicated entirely on whether or not someone else thinks they're hot? That argument throws itself out the window, because no one can know what or who anyone is going to make their waifu. A woman's body is not inherently sexual until a man says it is. And indeed, as far as I know, there are only men making most of the production decisions on this movie, and the fact that it was a man who said that Lola needed to have an appropriate length on her shorts in an attempt to make her a more authentic woman character is probably one of the most backwards things I've heard in a long time. One need only look back on all the times where teachers told female students that their shorts were too short, their shoulders too exposed, their womanness simply too womanly, and remember how poorly that was received. So it seems the only crime Lola committed is simply being the character she was drawn to be. And Warner Brothers, in a twist of fate worthy of a Greek tragedy, found the very controversy they hoped to avoid by taking their changes so far in the opposite direction. In trying so hard to make their female characters presentable to a modern audience, they caused the very battle they thought they were preempting. It just astounds me that this is where they chose to make their stand. This is where they wanted to begin a new crusade on behalf of all women, everywhere, who would apparently otherwise be totally ashamed of themselves and their bodies to see an anthropomorphic rabbit with shorts that are too short and a chest that dares to protrude. Children, of course, must be kept safe from the looming threat that is puberty. What would little girls do if they knew that their bodies might end up changing, might end up becoming women? Lola Bunny was never a problem. The problem, as always, lies with that ancient enemy, society. And the fact that the motivation behind changing her character design is an assumption that the mere shape of a woman itself is the problem, and not the people who will warp the original intent of any female character just to get their rocks off, is really just Warner Brothers agreeing with the very people they claim to be fighting against. Just from the other side of the argument.